Hi, I'm Todd VanDerWerff. I'm from the AV Club. You just saw The Winter Sun. We're going to be talking with a couple of the cast members. First, I want to break down the writer who adapted this from the original. That man is named Chris Mundy. Next, we have Mark Strong. You may have seen him in several films. He is here as our lieutenant. And finally, from several things you may notice him, but AMC fans will probably know him best for his work on The Walking Dead. He plays Joe, Lennie. So, Chris. Great.
Sorry.
They just met. Chris, what attracted you to this story from the original miniseries?
Well, many things. Essentially, I think it was incredibly intelligently constructed, and there's so much tension. It sort of plays in the beginning, and I inherited the bones of that. I inherited Simon Donald gets the credit for that. But what I love about it is you're just thrown in the middle, and it's really about a series of bad decisions and the repercussions. It's not a whodunit. It plays this crime and punishment from the beginning. You know who did it. They did it. The beauty of that is it can just be about these people in their life now dealing with the worst day of their life, the worst thing they've ever done.
A series of bad decisions describe the AMC brand, I think. Mark, what made you want to return to this particular story?
We'd done a version of it 6 or 7 years ago in the UK, and an actor never gets an opportunity to revisit something like this, years down the line. And originally it was set in Edinburgh, Scotland, and now it's set in Detroit. And it was creatively just too interesting a project not to get involved with it. Chris and I had a number of chats about it, and the pilot episode I thought was a barnstorming one, and it was a no-brainer really, and I'm very proud to be able to come back to it.
Lennie, you keep playing these characters whose allegiances we don't always know where they lie. What attracts you to that sort of role?
I just like guys who've got an internal kind of conflict, who've got something going on, otherwise I'm just a puppet saying words, and what you see is what you get, and that's not nearly as interesting as what you see is not what you get. So I like to play there. I like to play with guys who you can't quite figure out, and you've got to spend some time with them to, I think a lot of the times people want good guys and bad guys, and I like both.
All right, you guys filmed this on location in Detroit. Just tell me a little bit about that decision and what it was like to be in that city and some of the locations you went on.
I'll do the first part. These guys, because we're filming the whole thing in Detroit, so I go back and forth a bit from LA, but these guys are now Detroit residents, despite the accents. So for me, thematically, when I was going to try to adapt it, I sort of thought of it as about being about second chances and what you'd be willing to do to get a second chance and what extremes you might go through. So I wanted to set it in a place that was an issue for the place itself. And so for me, I thought about Detroit and I thought about New Orleans were the two that I thought about the most. One, I think New Orleans has been done a little bit more. And also, I'm from the Midwest originally. Detroit spoke more easily to me, and there was just something about the structure of that city. So, and Mark and I were just talking before we came over how much we have loved that city. It's weird because it has a bad rep for some good reasons, and it's fallen on hard times. But it's an incredibly engaging place, and they can speak to it better because, like I said, they're there every day now. I'm just there once in a while.
I went to buy some sneakers the other day, actually. I went into a shop and the guy said, "How are you enjoying Detroit?" I went, "It's great, I love it." And he paused and he went, Not a lot of people say that. And it's been an amazing place because they've been very, very good to us. They've allowed us to film. They shut down the main drag on Saturday nights so that we can do a scene there. I think they're very happy to have us. We've got some great liaison people kind of working with us from the city, and so the feeling of being there is that we're very welcome. I'm very proud to be there because, you know, there's some tough stuff going on in that city, and a lot of people, especially American friends of mine, said, you know, why are you going to Detroit? Why, you don't want to go there. And the more they said that, the more intrigued I became. And I have to say, there's a hell of a lot of stuff going on there that people don't know about. I mean, it's like a city trying to get off its knees, which we kind of feel is reflected in the show as well. We're trying to show people all trying to get up off their knees and do something good if they can. And I feel that that's reflected in the city that we're filming in. And we're trying wherever possible to kind of include local people, local places, and it's a really cool place to be right now.
There's a scene in the pilot where Mark's character Frank comes out of his house and there's the pristine lawn, and he picks up the little piece of paper and he throws it in the trash, and then you see the houses that are opposite his and they're just completely derelict and fallen down. That's Detroit. You know, we film on that road, and there's a family, and they own the house that we film in for Mark's place. They own one house on one side of it and two houses on the other, and they are virtually the only standing inhabited houses in like a 2-block radius. The lights don't come on at night unless there's lights in the house, and then you drive maybe 10 minutes up the road and you're on another planet. That's Detroit, and we're trying to reflect that in the show. And I think Detroit adds a lot to our show, because I've yet to meet anybody when we say, oh, we're doing this show that's set in Detroit, and they go, oh, cool. And we go, it's about 2 cops who kill another cop and try and get away with it, and they're investigating the crime, and it's about what it does to the underworld of Detroit. And they go, yeah, it sounds like Detroit. And no one said, oh, why are you saying that? You know, it really does, you know, they take on board the good and the bad, and that's, I think, what we're trying to project in our show.
That opening sequence, the teaser, is so arresting. Chris, can you talk about the writing process in that, and if you two actors, when you first read it, what did you think?
You know, quite a bit of that was I inherited from the original. So again, I think it's great, but I didn't say that because someone else did it. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. But I think what's interesting to me about it, and I mean, I changed it some, but is you're absolutely thrown into the middle of it, and you don't know their characters are cops. You have no context, and so you're just trying to catch up to this act. And I found that so interesting, and it's you know, there's a very violent act, but it feels human. It's sloppy and real. It doesn't feel like kind of glorified violence. It's not easy to kill a person. Or at least I'm told it's not easy to kill a person. And I wanted that. I think that's reflected in there. And so I think there's a real kind of visceral, like you're never let off the hook in that opening thing. Even when their characters are in the car and trying to figure out what the hell to do, you feel trapped in that car. And so I'm proud that we pulled that off, or at least I hope we pulled it. You guys can tell us if we pulled it off. But that was the intention, to not be able to breathe through that whole thing.
Just in terms of drama, you might imagine a pilot would end with a sequence like that, in order to kind of hook people in for next week. Well, that's what I found really interesting about it, is the stuff happens in the first 5-10 minutes. You've got this going on. Usually that would be reserved for the end, and if that's the starting point for the series and for the episode, that can only be a good thing. And it's incredibly dramatic, and you know, it posits the theory. You know, well, what do you do? How do you do what they've done? Why have they done what they've done? Who are these people? And yeah, to think that that's the start of our 10 episodes, it's a good place to be.
Yeah, I felt very much like Mark was saying, that when I read it, I thought, where are they going to go now? I mean, it's just, you know, we use up so much story in the pilot that you think, well, you know, what are we going to do with the next 9 episodes?
You said that to me after episode 2 as well.
I said after episode 2, I literally said, went up to Chris and went, okay, so we've used up all the story now. There is no more story left, and we're now shooting episode 5, and the writers really keep, pulling it out and bringing more story to it, and taking it on a logical kind of journey. And one of the things I really like about this is it's a really, really simple premise. There's no Martians coming down, or no end of the world scenarios, and I've done those to death. So, there's none of that. It's a very, very simple premise. 2 guys kill another guy, and then we're dealing with the reverberations. And it leaves a lot of the weight that needs to be carried on our shoulders, and that's really good, because it's about how the scripts are written, and how it's produced, and how it's directed, and how it's acted, and I like that kind of storytelling.
How do you go about expanding a story from like an original miniseries to something that could run a while?
The original was just 2 parts. It's really a movie, so that was the sort of challenge of it. Was having story areas. Like the side of this with Damon and Maya, and that didn't exist in the original, so it was a way to sort of create avenues for story, but then also where these worlds could sort of cross and have natural, hopefully, intersections. So that's been a lot of it. Some of it was just opening up that precinct a little bit, and opening up the case a little bit, having it going further into the body of the trunk, which loops into our story, obviously, soon. And also, the original was so tightly done on just the story. The beauty of doing a 10-episode season, and hopefully many more 10-episode seasons, is you get to go into people's lives a little bit more. So we think of the first 3 episodes go kind of fast and furious, and then the 4th we kind of go sideways a little bit in order to do that, and it just keep a rhythm to that, so it's not always just one thing.
It may be a nice thing to tell, is a story I've already told this morning, I told the guys, but Chris knows the whys and wherefore of the plot, and what the actual specifics are. But the other night I was coming back from shooting, it was late, and I got round to the costume truck, and all I could hear coming out the door of the costume truck were these voices going, "Oh my God, what, really? No, oh my God." So I popped round to see what was going on, and it was the 2 costume girls, Gina and Brittany, who were listening rapt to Derek, the costume guy, who gets the episodes in advance. He's up to 9 or 10 because he has to know what everyone's going to wear, and he was telling them the story. And I didn't realise that every week when an episode comes out, they rush around and Derek tells us, and he tells them a story about some guy around a campfire, and they listen. And I just thought that was a great thing, that we've got guys on the crew who are really up for what's happening, what the story is, the fact that they want to know what's happening, and it's a testament to the writers and Chris and the writing room that as the episodes come out, the stories are amazing. It goes off in places you'd never imagine. I mean, that wonderfully introduces every single one of the characters, so now we know what the world is, and I have to say, where it goes from here is fascinating, and if Gina and Brittany, the costume girls, are into it, I'm sure.
You'll get a chance to ask some questions in a moment, so think of some better ones than mine. But you've really built the world of the police precinct just beautifully. What's been fun about playing that world for the actors and sort of developing those characters beyond what we saw in the original?
We've got a really fantastic police advisor, a 30-year veteran Detroit cop called Todd, and he's always there, and he is so kind of open and so free to tell us some really, stories that we could never put in our show and walk the streets ever again. It's and he's been just a font of knowledge of opening up the Detroit police force to us and his colleagues, and there is. I've played quite a few kind of cops, both this side of the Atlantic and the other side of the Atlantic, so I feel kind of comfortable in that skin. But one of the things that we needed to work on is how the job gets done in Detroit, and that's slightly different. You'll notice to a certain extent in the way that my character kind of dresses, and it gets loud and strange as the series goes on. It does. And And I arrive on set and I go, really? I mean, really? And everybody goes, no man, that's Move Detroit. And I go, I bow to it, and you know, and they've got this thing, I don't know if you'll see it, they've got this thing where they dress everything in the same colour. So there's one scene that we just shot in episode 5 where me and Mark have a really long sequence. We got like a 12-page whole act of the show is me and Mark in a room just talking through the case, just trying to get it right. And they dressed me in this blue top with matching blue trousers, with blue socks and matching gaiters that are blue. And I'm like, there's a lot of blue going on here. And they go, yeah, that's Detroit. And I go, okay.
Or a practical joke we're playing on Lennie.
Or a practical joke. Let's play a practical joke on the English guy. Let's dress him in the same colour every time. But in answer to your question, a lot of our the joy of playing it is that these guys just happen to be cops. It isn't so much, we're not getting wound up in the minutiae of the process of the cops. They're using, their job is important, and it's important for us to get it right, so that if we get it wrong, it pops. But the rest of the time, it's very much about these characters existing within this fishbowl.
You're airing with Breaking Bad, which is a big show for TV fans. What would you say to Breaking Bad fans to entice them to stick around for this one?
What can you say? It's impossible. Breaking Bad is an amazing show. And I think this is a show for everybody who loves kind of complicated, interesting, challenging television. Shows are completely different. I can see why the demographic might be similar, because it asks you to think. It doesn't spoon feed you. It takes you on a journey, and hopefully those are the similarities we'll share. But they're very different shows.
Yeah, and I can say that when we found out we were behind Breaking Bad, I came into the writers and told everyone, it's like, oh my God, that's amazing, that's fantastic. And then one of the writers just looked and goes, we can't suck now. and we're doing our absolute best not to suck, I promise. But I think, for us, that's one of the best shows ever on television, in my opinion. So, for us, we're trying to be our own show, but I think there's an intensity, or at least in the intent, that we share with them, and hopefully if we do our job well, then they'll pair well together.
All right, time for your questions. Does anybody have one? There we go, right there in the back.
Hi, I just have a quick question. AMC's become so synonymous with pushing the envelope with shows like Breaking Bad and Walking Dead, which I'm a huge fan of. Was there ever a time when you were writing, or the two of you were working on a scene where you went, oh, can we put this on television? Too much? Did you ever feel like maybe it might not?
No, the challenge is to have things be real, keep that edge without doing it just to be edgy. And so we tried to make sure that everything felt honest and real. I can say from working at AMC, that's the only network I've ever seen where they challenge you to go deeper. Not necessarily more sensationalistic, but just deeper into the stuff. So, we've been sort of amazed that we're to get into the depth of what these guys are going through and the reality of what their characters did. We've kind of gone for it, and we've always thought about it as like a little movie. And until someone told us not to, we were going to keep doing it, and no one's told us not to.
And the truth is, once you drowned a guy in a sink, punched him in the head, cuffed him to a car and thrown him in the water, pretty much everything goes.
Other questions right there. Yes?
This is for Mark. Getting to revisit this character over so many years, what do you want to bring to the or when you get to be what are you able to do?
Could everyone hear the question? The lady asked, coming back to the character after all this time, how does it feel and what can I bring to it that's new? I mean, the transposing it from Edinburgh to Detroit has been the really big thing. And getting into America, an American city, an American skin is great for it. It's exactly what you want. You want to play stuff that's kind of removed from yourself. I've always played characters really rather than myself, so I feel like I'm playing a character with Frank rather than myself because it's not from my home city. But it's reawakening all the original feelings because in the original there was a murder and it was trying to cover up that murder and the psychological pressure of trying to keep that secret with another guy. And it's been fascinating finding where the thing is similar and where it's completely different. As Chris said, the whole story of the bad guys, totally new, that's completely different. And the original was only 2 1.5-hour episodes. So now by episode 5, we're already in completely different territory, and I wish I could tell you some of the stuff that's happened over the last few episodes that wasn't in the original, because it's been fascinating for me, because there were certain dead ends that happened with the original, quite naturally, because it was the end of the show, that have been taken further in this, so that's been fascinating. And as an actor, you get to have this character arc that runs over a much longer period, so that's been enjoyable for me.
We can pretend Chris isn't here, and you can just tell us. Anyone else out there? There we go.
So as sort of a follow-up to that, obviously the location's different, you Americanized versus your original setting. Do you envision him in your head as the same guy, or is he like a completely different guy, with your own mind?
Do I envision him as the same guy? So it's a really good question.
It's just a continuation of the same guy, obviously translated, but from an emotional standpoint.
That's a really good and a really difficult question. I don't really know. I mean, at root somewhere he's me, but it kind of he is different. Yeah, I mean he has the same name and he's dealing with the same issue, but he's an American cop from Detroit. It is different. Yeah. Yeah, I have to say yes.
Anyone else? Right there.
For me, gentlemen ask when they come and ask you to do a series, how much do you want to know about what the future, what's coming up? You get the pilot, you read the pilot, and decide on the basis of that whether the writing is strong or whether it's something you want to get involved with. And to be honest with you, I don't know how people feel on other series. You can ask Mr. Mount, who's about to come up next, because he's further down the line than we are on his third series. But I'm begging to know what's in the 10 episodes. I kind of really want to know what the arc is, because also in the UK, where we've shot most of our TV, everything's written. It's a 2 or 4 or 6 episode, and it's rarely longer than that. You know everything. I mean, you have every episode, so you know the arc, you know exactly what's going to happen. This is a whole new thing for me, that you find out with every episode where your character is headed. And so you want to know, so that you can, have it. But on the other hand, sometimes it's good not to, because then you can play scenes, not knowing what your character would know. So the truth is, there's a kind of middle ground. And I ring up Chris and go, tell me. And he goes, no, I can't. And there's a middle ground in this track, basically.
I think one of the things that's, for me, that's important is if there's something that my character is going to do coming up, I don't necessarily want to know about it. But if there's something that, like for example, something that's kind of like, I don't think I'm giving anything away, but my character has a daughter, and he's got typically a kind of estranged relationship with his daughter. It's important that I know I've got a daughter, for upcoming things, but it's not necessarily important for me to know the actions that I'm going to do, particularly in this story, because so much of it we're flying by the seat of our pants. So we don't know we're going to do something until we're doing it. So I don't need to know in advance, that I'm going to, dress up in a dress and go pogo sticking down Main Street of Detroit. So look out for that episode.
Episode 8.
Hang in there. Just because when you think it's not going to happen, that's when it will happen.
We have time for 2 or 3 more. Right there in the black shirt.
Yeah, did the choice of 10 episodes, did that come out of singing with Breaking Bad? Because like standard cable season's 13 normally, is 10 selected?
That's sort of AMC's, that was an AMC decision. And I think they've done it on a couple, they did it on Hell on Wheels the last couple of years. they did it with us. So, you know, that I have no control over. As it turns out, because the final Breaking Bad season is actually 8, so their finale will be our second to last one. Because we're going to do a 2-hour last part, but that's. What was it? I think Mark was saying the original. Oh yeah, original Breaking Bad. Yeah, it was like 7 episodes. So I think that's really somewhere in an office in New York at AMC they make those decisions.
There, the striped shirt. Yeah, you.
So, Chris, Mark, and Lennie, it's awesome that you're here. Really enjoyed the pilot. My question is for Chris, producer writer, Mark, and Lennie, producers, actors. When you're involved, especially kind of a rapidly filmed series or in a movie that's kind of brings out part of your personal elements, when you're immersed in these worlds, especially as you're playing characters where you're writing characters that are often isolated and doing these dark, gritty things, is it difficult to, when you're not being an actor or when you're not writing, to pull your head out of that environment and kind of normalize yourself, reacquaint yourself with the rest of society?
I don't think so. You know, I'm amazed by these guys because they'll honestly they'll be on set and you're like between takes and be like, all right, lovely, and then they'll turn like, excuse me, I've got a film, and then they'll turn and be like fierce. It's like, so I don't know if it's they make it look effortless. I'll tell you that. In terms of the writing. No, but it's always going on in your brain. I don't think you're like antisocial, but you also I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning all the time. Like it's going on there, but more in a story sense, not in a sort of deep method research sort of way. But I think everybody's different. I mean, honestly, there's a couple writers on the show that will probably tell you the opposite, and I know it's whatever works for a writer or for an actor.
Yeah. I've worked with actors who turn up on the first, they're in character and they're doing, whatever they need to do, and if that gets you through the night, that's fine. I don't need to work like that. I don't think Len does either. I can't speak for him, but we talk in our own accents, in between takes and stuff, and we just kick in to the character. Maybe because the character's removed from you, you can switch it on and off. If it's closer to you, it's maybe more difficult. But in the past, I've always wondered whether that is because we come from the theatre. When you train in the UK as an actor, you start with theatre. And when we started, there wasn't really very much. There was some TV, but because you had to kind of do your apprenticeship to get into it, there wasn't much film. And in theatre, you switch it on and off. You walk off stage, the minute you're that side of the flag, you're out of character, and the minute you're that side, you're in character. You don't go backstage into the dressing room and stay in character and talk in Chekhovian lines or in Shakespeare. You switch it on and off, and I wonder whether maybe the reason I'm okay doing that is because of the theatre.
I think as far as the kind of where this one is slightly different is because we're on location in Detroit, where I find myself being in the mindset a little bit more because we're there, and also Detroit. You turn a corner and you really are in a different world. And then you turn another corner and you're back into it's the most surprising, exciting, dangerous and fascinating kind of first world city I think I've ever been in my life. So I do kind of sometimes walk the streets with the mentality of searching it out, not as if I was a cop, but with the certain antennae that playing the guy like that kind of gives you, I suppose. And it's only slight, and saying it makes it bigger than it is, but I have noticed that I'll suddenly walk down the road and kind of go and be reading it as in a way that, I grew up in London, it's not like I'm walking the streets frightened, but I'm walking the streets a little bit more like I own them, which is scary.
Right down here.
Lennie asked me, we both worked with Guy Ritchie, we've both done kind of crime cop stuff before, and whether it's appealing doing that kind of stuff. I have to say it is, yeah, because as an actor you want the stuff of drama and treat faith, honesty, betrayal, danger. They tend to be associated with dodgy characters, and they're often associated with the world of cops and robbers and spies in another world that has inherent drama in it. So yeah, it's inevitable that you find yourself playing those kind of characters because they tend to be the most interesting ones, in my experience.
And also, I think it's, a lot of it is, it's like, why Shakespeare wrote a lot about kings and queens and dukes and all that kind of stuff. And then, if you break them down, they're doing pretty much the same thing. They're either sleeping with the wrong person or killing the wrong person or going out and having a war with the wrong person or having babies with the wrong person. It's all of that. But if they're kings and queens and dukes and stuff, what they do affects everybody else. There's a knock-on effect. It's not just happening in their house. And I think the same is true of cops. And if they're dirty, it has an effect on our lives. On the way that they police the street. If they're corrupt, it has an effect on everybody. So that's one reason why we're kind of fascinated by it. And I think that our story that we're telling has a really interesting twist on it. It's because there's a phrase. I keep saying it because I want people to hear me say it, even though it was Mark's phrase. Is that he said in this one, we're not trying to solve a crime, we're trying to unsolve a crime. We're the two lead detectives investigating a murder that we've committed. And there's a scene that comes up later where a guy comes in as a witness who says he's witnessed something, and he gives us his version of it, and we're in the room with him kind of going, trying to destroy instead of pulling more out of him, we're trying to shove it back into him. And it just adds a really interesting dynamic and a really interesting twist on what could be a very conventional story, and it really isn't. The places we go and the things that happen, as I said, I kept thinking we were using up story, but there's so much more that these guys are coming up with, and it's just, it's good to go to work on this one. It really is.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists, and you can see Lo and Your Son in August.